Hi, and welcome to the Law Simplified. I'm Shaveen Bandad-Nayaka. The most daunting type of question for most law students is not that of a problem or a scenario-based question, but that of an essay or theoretical one. Now, oftentimes, many students across the various platforms that the Law Simplified has been disseminated on, as well as my fast track and masterclass students, have intimated to me how difficult it is, on the one hand, to understand what an essay question is all about, and thereby how to structure a response, and on the other hand, how best to elevate oneself beyond that of any other student to achieve that elusive 2-1 or a first class law degree or a grading in terms of an essay question for subjects like public law, for jurisprudence, and so on. Having gone through hundreds of responses or answer scripts from students all around the world and having provided them with detailed feedback reports for them, one common denominator, something quite intrinsic across the board that I've noticed, is how frightened and fearful students are of going outside of the parameters that they have been given by their university or by the institution that they're following their law degree at. Now, there is one particular technique that I implore on you and that I would like to impress on you to try and implement to not just show your confidence to an examiner, but also indicates how you are thinking at a completely different level to every other student. Now, to repeat myself, perhaps for the 1000th time on this very channel, remember that a law degree is much more about how you think as opposed to what you know. So rather than me illustrating this in terms of a video one-on-one, I thought I'll give an illustration based on a worked example by looking at a fundamental concept that most of you might be familiar with, especially in the first year in terms of public law, and then dissecting that concept from a descriptive level, which would essentially be a pass level, and that of an ace level or a 2-1 or a first class level. What an examiner would want to see from such a student. So let's have a look. To illustrate how best you as a student can impress your examiner by not just being descriptive about what you have studied in an examination, but going beyond and utilizing critiques and then reviewing and analyzing the circumstances, showcasing your opinion, let's have a look at the application of such a concept through the rule of law. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the rule of law, make sure you check out the playlist that's available on this YouTube channel entitled Public Law, specifically that of rule of law. And if you want to learn further, do check out the online law school. I would highly recommend either the fast track or the masterclass on public law to give you a better grasp and understanding of the subject properly. But that being said, in terms of the rule of law, we are going to focus on one particular concept expounded by A.V. Dicey. The three limbs of rule of law as expounded by A.V. Dicey is that everyone is equal before the law, you cannot be punished if you haven't committed a crime as prescribed by the law, and rights are best protected under common law, or fundamental rights are best protected under common law. Now, for this illustration, what we are going to do is utilize the first limb that Dicey has expounded, essentially that everyone is equal before the law, and I'll showcase to you what essentially a bare pass or at worst a fail would look like in terms of a student answer, what you can do to elevate that response to a 2-2 or even a 2-1 at that, if your articulation is proper, and what you can do to elevate that to a first class or an exemplary answer from an examiner's perspective. Now, firstly, if we take the principle and outline it, and you describe it to an examiner, essentially the fact that Dicey has suggested that one of the fundamental precepts of the rule of law is that everyone is treated equally before it. Now, just suggesting it in this way would, based on how you've articulated it and how you've presented it, essentially be a pass, a 40 if you're in the relevant jurisdiction. Now, fundamentally, this would get you through the exam, but this is what we refer to as a descriptive answer. You've shown the examiner that you know what it is about. Essentially, you know, at least through rote learning or memory, that the first limb that Dicey spoke about is that everyone is equal before the law. To go a step beyond this and to show the examiner that you've read around the subject and perhaps understand somewhat the importance of it, you might want to use a critique, for instance. Sir Ivor Jennings, for instance, has critiqued this first limb by Dicey by suggesting that in reality, there are few classes of persons that are treated unequally. For example, minors or children, for instance, are treated unequally in terms of their punishment. They are considered juveniles and the process of litigation is quite different. Similarly, other protected persons like members of parliament and judges, in order to fulfill their duty towards state, might be exempt or immune from suit in certain instances. So in reality, what Jennings essentially suggests is that Dicey is considering something as a monolith when in fact it's a tapestry essentially. There are many tessellated components of it. Now going into this level would mean that you're looking at a 2-2 or a 2-1, and in some instances, if you're really good at the critiques and if you've looked at sufficiently, you have perhaps a chance of trying to elevate it even further overall. But what I would argue and what I would suggest is the best mode or the best thing that you should do is try and review and show the examiner that you've understood and appreciated the importance of not just the principle but the critique, but what you have understood and taken out of it. So if we take these two juxtaposing components, one in which Dicey suggests that everyone is equal before the law, and the other in which Jennings suggests that not really, there are some people or some classes of persons that are treated unequally, what you need to do is to review this and understand that this distinction and the fact that some classes are treated unequally is by choice, and it's to dispense justice. Doing so means that your review, your argument, is that the law treats persons equitably as opposed to equally. And this distinction, the fact that you've understood that there's a difference between being treated equally and being treated equitably, fundamentally shows the examiner that you're thinking at a deeper level. This exemplifies the nuance that I have constantly proliferated, which is a law examination and your law degree is far less or much less about what you know, but rather it's about how you think. Now, getting into this level is essentially a first-class answer. Your examiner is able to not just showcase in terms of the justification of the grade that you know what you're talking about, but that your understanding in comparison to other students and other scripts that have been marked is at a far higher level. Right. So that was a quick outline of how to take a particular theoretical idea, especially in public law, in this case rule of law, and how to go beyond just simply describing what it is and then perhaps critiquing a bit from the perspective of another academic or a jurist. The idea that you need to have an independent voice and an opinion, especially for a topic like rule of law, is evident when any examiner looks at your answer script. So going beyond just the description and going beyond just looking at a few critiques that other academics might have posed to the scenario that we just looked at, and looking at it from the perspective of your own opinion and showcasing to an examiner your own personal voice indicates to an examiner that you're deserving of much more than just a pass, and that you are deserving of a 2-1 or even a first class, depending on how you've articulated it. If you like the type of content that I make, do subscribe to the Law Simplified and make sure you give a like to this video and share it with your colleagues and friends as well. If you are interested in learning more about how to break down both problem and essay-based questions, as well as articulating responses at a higher level, make sure you check out the online law school platform, which is complete with comprehensive theory, tutorial, and workshop lessons to help you go from a pass to that of an ace. But until the next time that we meet, have fun, stay safe, and as always, obey the law.